Joan Chen's having a moment. And if you don't know who that is, well, think like The Last Emperor or Twin Peaks.
I'm not going to jail. I can't.
Put it down, Josie.
I mean, these movies and TV shows where she was often cast as sad or sexy women. Her latest film is Montreal Mabel, and it's one of the latest string of indie films where we're seeing an entirely new side to Joan Chen. I'm Radheyan Simonpillai, sitting in for Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. Hoai-Tran and Tomas Leblanc are here to get into this with me. Welcome to Commotion, y'all.
Hi, Rod. Great to be here.
Thanks for being here. Listen, Hoai-Tran, I want to start with you. I mean, let's talk about Joan Chen. I mentioned earlier some of her earlier roles in Hollywood. I mean, you think of The Last Emperor, she's playing that opium-addicted empress. You think of Twin Peaks, she's playing that mysterious Josie Packard. Now, Joan's in her 60s. And in the last few years, we've been seeing this whole new side to her in films directed by young Asian filmmakers. So are you seeing this as a Joan Chen renaissance?
Yeah, I really feel like Joan Chen is enjoying this second wave in her career thanks to that influx of young Asian filmmakers who have started to make inroads in Hollywood after, the success of Crazy Rich Asians. And I remember liking her quite a bit in this small Netflix film from 2020 called Tiger Tail, which was directed by Alan Yang. And she had quite a small role in that, but she made a big impression. And then there was, of course, Didi, which I think she was just exquisite in. And last year's The Wedding Banquet, which saw her flex her comedic chops in a way we haven't really seen before.
You need all of it?
All of it. Every Pride Parade photo, every National Coming Out Day post.
Can I still post Instagram stories?
Do you want grandchildren?
I'll delete Instagram now.
These were all supporting roles and mostly as like maternal figures to young Asian American protagonists. But it feels like she was intentionally cast by these filmmakers who likely grew up watching Joan Chen in like The Last Emperor or Twin Peaks and wanted to finally do her justice.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, in all of those movies you mentioned, I feel like she was the best part, like so compelling in all of those. And it really kind of encouraged me to want to go back and revisit her earlier work with this new lens, right? Now let's talk about her latest film, Montreal Mabel, where she's playing an immigrant mother, not unlike these kind of recent roles she's had lately, but this time she's an immigrant mother and wife who is falling in love with a young woman. So can you talk to me about her performance in this movie?
I think she's terrific in Montreal Mabel, or trying to like give a little French pronunciation.
You're trying to outshine me on our Montreal pronunciation.
This is her first leading role in a while, and it's so wonderful to see her deliver the kind of like complex, quietly suffering performances that she's done in mostly in the sidelines in her recent roles and do it in the spotlight. She gets to be complicated, turmoiled, and sexy. And I don't know if this is her first like nude like performance in a while, or at least like in a while, but she looks great. But it's a really beautiful performance and really multi-layered.
Yeah, I was blown away by this performance. And I should say, I mean, Joan Chen here, she is working with Chinese-Canadian filmmaker Xiao Dan-he, and this is the second feature from Xiao Dan-he that she has written and directed. Tomas, you said that you were actually surprised when you watched this film. So tell me, what was surprising for you?
Well, Quebec cinema, it's a very vibrant national cinema. This film has been shot in Montreal, produced in Montreal, so I would say it's a Quebec film. But it's also nothing like I've ever seen in a Quebec film. It's an immigrant story. It's a queer immigrant love story where the protagonist is, not a young woman discovering her queerness in her 20s. She's a mother. She's in her 50s. There's so many interesting details about her relationship to the place where she is, Montreal, as a first-generation Chinese immigrant. Also, she seemed to me extremely believable. She plays the wife of a dépanneur owner. If you've been to Montreal, if you've been to Quebec, you know what a dépanneur is. It's a corner store. We sell beer there. We sell cigarettes. It's a staple. And most dépanneurs in Montreal are owned by Chinese couples like this one. So to see the reality of a first-generation Chinese immigrant owning a dépanneur in Montreal, that story to be told, and to have a very important queer element. It's not something I've ever seen. And then you get into the relationship with the daughter, who's second generation, goes to school in Montreal, has a very like thick Quebecois accent, like a lot of second generation Chinese immigrant I've been to school with. Her husband, who's trying to find a job in the Quebec work market as an immigrant. I think all of these is as a Quebecois, I haven't seen these. I'm aware of these dynamics, but I haven't seen them on the screen that often.
Yeah, I love that authentic dynamic. And I mean, you mentioned the daughter. Hoai-Tran, we should talk about, like, the film actually begins with Joan Chen's character Feng Sha visiting the doctor and then relying on that daughter to translate French to Mandarin for her. And so, can you talk to me about how does that set up their relationship, but also, like, how does that set up Feng Sha's relationship to Montreal?
Yeah, this is a scene very familiar to many second generation immigrants, and I myself am one. And though I haven't experienced this for myself, my parents both speak pretty good English. I do know plenty of family members and friends who have had to translate for their parents, and I think it speaks to the authenticity of the film and that sort of resistance to assimilation while wanting a better life for their kids that a lot of immigrant parents experience. And for Feng Sha specifically, the resistance to embracing her true sexuality and the freedom that Montreal represents with that, I think.
Yeah, that is interesting how, like, language becomes kind of the skeleton key that opens up a whole new world for her when she's willing to, adapt to it or I mean, again, it's always a struggle for people to even make that effort, right? But when she makes that effort, she's discovering a whole new world. That's what I really love about this movie. And
One thing that's shown in the movie is the reality of the French language classes that are government funded for new immigrants, and she enrolls in one of them. And I think I've never seen this on screen in the fiction film, and it was quite beautiful to see it portrayed almost as a sort of documentary scene with the other participants. I believe a lot of non-actors also.
And yeah, it's like I love that moment, the dynamic between the classmates in that moment. But and again, like, that is, of course, that opens the door to this romance, this love story, right, Thomas? And I want to talk about, like, that love story. I mean, this relationship between Feng Sha and this younger French Canadian woman Camille. This is a slow, simmering love story. I want to know how you felt about the way their chemistry plays across that romance.
Well, she first hears about the possibility of being out and queer in Montreal from a student in that French class, and then she logs in on this website. She meets. At first, the woman is named Lisa, and then she later says that her name is Camille. And then she was like, "Well, I'll put you to the test. If you really want to meet me, come to the coffee shop where I work." So we very gradually their relationship develops. She shows up to the coffee shop. They start hanging out. They try to have intimate moments and fail. Eventually, the conflict builds up, and they resolve that conflict through these really beautiful sex scenes that you've mentioned earlier. And even if at first I was like, do I really like I wasn't sure I was buying into the proposition of, like, this, like, woman who barely speaks any French, kind of getting with this other with this, like, young francophone Quebecois, out lesbian queer person. But once I bought into it, and I was seeing what they were getting from each other, because we got the backstory from Camille. Camille doesn't speak to her mother. It would be very easy to frame this as a mommy issue. I think it's deeper than this, but I think that the director and the story really, like, made sure we understood the other characters' backstory so that their relationship to Feng Sha made sense. And I think that's why this relationship works on the screen.
Well, Hoai-Tran, I mean, can you jump in on that in terms of this relationship and how it evolves over time and throughout the pace of this movie?
Yeah, this movie is definitely a bit of a slow burn, but I think that the pacing, perfectly complements the story that the film is trying to tell. It's a story of a woman slowly coming to terms with her own sexuality, later in life, which she can't even articulate or even acknowledge at first. And there's a good John Green quote that I like. It's, like, always funny when I say it's a John Green quote, but it's I fell in love, like I fall asleep slowly and then all at once. And I think that's the kind of feeling that Montreal Mabel really captures.
And what I love about kind of the slow burn, as you called it, is that it gives the room for Joan Chen's performance to really evolve, specifically that physical performance. And you see that in the sex scenes in terms of how she opens up across the sex scenes, but even her physicality when she's walking through the streets, right? She starts off the movie, she's very kind of constrained, and then she really loosens up to the point where she's, gravitating towards a public dance on the streets. So that was really like kind of a remarkable moment for me. Tomas, we got to talk about the husband in this movie because, he is a domineering force in a story and in the story. And that could be very easy to vilify. How does the movie manage to find some empathy for him? And then what did you think of that character and his relationship to his wife?
I think it's very well done. Obviously, it's not a spoiler to say that eventually he finds out what's going on. I won't say how or what he decides to do about this. But he is someone who, went to university back in China, is trying to get a job in his field here. It's not working, and it's highlighting a reality of the labor market and certainly in Quebec. I don't know about the rest of Canada, where if you don't have a first experience in Quebec, it's very hard to get hired. And I think that's unfortunate, but it frames this as this kind of just like reality that a lot of first generation immigrants have to go through here. And then there's a question of dignity, honestly, when we see him in the interview process and he's trying to process that, but he's also not able to be close to his wife. So it feels like he's getting very, very lonely. I had actually a lot of empathy for him. And I also think it's great because it gives visibility to so many Chinese immigrant men, like the men I was telling you about, who owns the dépanneur. We see them all around the city, but we never really know their backstory, what they're going through, with the life they have to deal with. And I thought it humanizes a presence that's like a big presence in a city like Montreal. I think the actor was actually pretty good. I believe it's one of his first acting experiences. Very believable from my perspective as a non-Asian, and I thought he gave like it's sad and bittersweet, his relationship with his wife, but I really believed, and I really believed the dynamic with the two children. I think he was really great.
Yeah, I agree. He did a great job with not an easy role. Hoai-Tran, I only have 20 seconds here, but I do want to kind of end on Joan Chen. We were talking about this being her second wave of a new wave for Joan Chen, but also, when you consider her career as a whole, you consider the kind of recognition she maybe did not get. She was almost, there was some buzz around Didi, her getting an Oscar nomination that didn't materialize. She was, of course, part of The Last Emperor, which won all 9 of its Oscars, but none of the cast was nominated. Would you say, really quickly, that Joan Chen has been overlooked by this industry?
I would definitely say she's been overlooked by this industry. I think since the beginning of her career, she's been typecast as this exotic flower. And now that she's older and still beautiful, she's finally been able to break beyond those expectations and be appreciated for her skills. But even now, Asian performances are still very overlooked or underrated by awards bodies. Look at the award sweep for Parasite, for example, which pretty much included all of the cast. So I think that's like an uphill battle for a lot of Asian actors. But I think Joan Chen has definitely suffered that because her career has been so long and has been so essential part of Asians in Hollywood.
So that's a great note to go out on. So thank you both for speaking to me about this. Hoai-Tran Bui is an entertainment editor at Inverse. Tomas Leblanc is a cultural commentator on Radio Canada's EC premiere in Montreal. Montreal Mabel is in limited theaters across Canada starting Friday. And check out Q's podcast later this week if you get a chance. Q guest host Garvia Bailey spoke to Joan Chen about the film and her career.